Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are, welcome. We are so happy you're here. Happy July 5th. I hope that those of you who have entered into your next fiscal year have gotten at least a little bit of R&R already, and that today, Saturday and Sunday will help you get energized, because I know that the fiscal year is off to sorry, whoops. I'm always just checking to make sure we're live. And then when I turn it on to make sure we're live, then it starts talking to me. The thing about being a fundraiser that can be so challenging is here we are, we're mission driven. We want to make an impact in the world. And that's what we wake up in the morning and go to our jobs to do. And we self-identify as somebody who makes the world a slightly better place every day. And that momentum, that sense of accomplishment in doing so, hopefully we do feel at the end of the fiscal year, right? Hopefully you take a moment, if you haven't already, to reflect on the impact that you've made in the world this year, the work that you did that only you can do, and the things that motivate you and keep you going through the, endless contact reports and meetings and memos and briefings and events and back and forth, right? It's so important that you take that pause. And I just want to acknowledge that one of the challenging parts of our year as fundraisers is July 1st, when we wake up in the morning and it's like, what have you done for me lately, right? All the scoreboards are back at zero, right? The programs that we got funded last year may be thriving, but the scoreboard looks as though, right, it's blank right now. And I just want to acknowledge that that scoreboard doesn't reflect your impact. It doesn't reflect your value. And again, I hope you take time to recognize the great work that you've done this year, this calendar year, this fiscal year already. So, and congratulations for all of your accomplishments in FY24. FY25 is probably going to be the most exciting year of any of our careers. We are in an unprecedented time. One of my friends and thought leaders, Kyle Shannon, says, 2023 was the last normal year. And I absolutely believe that. And initially, I thought that some of these changes that we're all seeing in various sectors, that those changes were going to be slower in arriving into the nonprofit sector. But not only is that not true, because they are here and ever present and in our day-to-day, also what I'm so proud of is that the rap that nonprofits get sometimes about, being slow to adopt, and, we're not really joiners, and, we're afraid of tech. That is just absolutely not what I see. The resistance and even if it's not resistance, people kind of like putting their head in the sand is not happening in the nonprofit sector in the way it is across the board. Like, we are all in this AI revolution, like totally in the same boat. And what I'm so thrilled about is how many people from the nonprofit sector are coming out and saying, no, I want to learn this stuff. I want to optimize the work that I'm doing. I want to get rest. I want to do my best work ever. And I don't want to wait. I don't want to be left behind. How can I figure this stuff out? Where do I go for education? Where do I go for community? And so what we're going to talk about today, I have my friend and collaborator, Rachel Kimber, here, and we're going to talk about our solution to this question about where do I go to get better at this so that I can do my best work ever, so that I can get rest, so that I can guide my organization into the future with responsible AI rather than letting things happen to us. And then where do we find our community? And within those communities, how do we shift our understanding of our own self-identity? which is one of the, recent learnings and a thought process that Rachel and I have been spending a lot of time talking about is how does the AI revolution change how we all self-identify? And we've got lots of examples of that, and know that, we, although like she and I have been all in for a while, for sure, no question, that does it have closed caption, Keith? Let me see. It's a very good question. I am looking. Thank you for asking. We have a button that says captions. Let's see. Lower third, captions, add. No, that's not it. That's not it either. Captions, captions, captions. Need help. Let me see if I can. Actually, let me bring Rachel on to do her intro, and then I will keep working on the captions thing. Thank you, Dr. Keith, for bringing that up. Rachel, take it away while I do this piece.
Yes. Hi, friends. I love it when technologists get to do real-time troubleshooting because it just demonstrates how human we are. And we're here learning with y'all and figuring out this AI moment with perhaps a little bit more expertise. The reason Ann and I have partnered up is because we both come from different slices of the nonprofit ecosystem and have pretty divergent skill sets, right? And so when we bring those two things together, we're an unstoppable powerhouse when it comes to educating folks on AI. So my background begins in academia with research and cognitive science, which was my undergraduate degree 20 years ago. And that looks like the study of the mind and the brain. And so with some level of expertise, I can say that no, AI is not coming to take your job. However, if you don't start learning how to engage with this tool, I can assure you that you are going to fall behind the learning curve. And it looks like that moment when computers were introduced at offices or Google searches became the norm instead of going to the library stack and going to find your research. So those of us who are of a certain age have lived through these moments before. We also know people of a certain age who fell behind and are really struggling now to use their phones, right? Like we know who those folks are. And if you don't want that to be you, you want to continue learning with Ann and I. I have spent 20 years in the philanthropic space specifically. And that means that my call isn't necessarily to build the tools and build the technology. My call is to recognize that our sector has a different need. As nonprofit organizations, we don't want to use the same fintech tools that our friends over in the banking industry might use. We have different needs, and we need to make sure that those get lifted up. It's near impossible to get those things funded with the resources we have. We know that our budgets don't provide a lot of space for extra. Our staff is already pretty thinly stretched at nonprofit organizations and philanthropies. And so how do we start to add this layer of AI into our daily work? It's a big lift. And so Ann and I have come together to help y'all understand, what is this tool? First of all, we need to explore and articulate, what is it? What can it do? Define some of those basic terms like predictive and generative and large language models. Like, what does all of that mean? And then as our friends, colleagues, community folks, as you start understanding what this tool can and cannot do, we can start to ideate together. We can start to innovate and create at least the use cases, right? If we don't get to develop the tools because we don't have those specific skill sets, we can start figuring out what we need. And as we're able to articulate what those needs look like, having become an accidental technologist in the philanthropic space, right? I have access to some of the funding streams. I know how that game gets played. I've also become an advocate for partnering with our vendors. And that looks like talking to Microsoft, talking to Salesforce, going to Blackbaud and saying, we need this functionality. And so I know that some of the big players in the AI space right now are working to add what's called a trust layer to their tool. And I think that's great. I think that means that the vendors have heard that we're concerned. What happens if we use AI on our data? And that's a hard question to answer. The large language models are extractive. That's part of what the tool does, is it takes our data and uses it to learn. And then, the security of personal identifying information becomes also problematic. And so, what some of these big vendors have done is build a trust layer. And what that looks like is as you enter your tool and your data, you're able to run AI against that. Super exciting, really cool. Still inadequate if we're dealing with beginners. And so Anne and I are here to help you get from beginner layer to actually understand what does it mean to navigate a trust layer? What does it mean to run data through AI tools? And so that's what our hope is in holding these conversations and really digging into AI, is not that we have the answers and the solutions, but that we understand how to connect the dots and how to bring the resources together so that our sector is able to thrive and use this tool how we want to use the tool. I didn't even introduce my company, Anne. I just get so excited about AI. And so
Yes.
to that end,
I want you to introduce your company. First, I want to share something with Dr. Keith. So I love that you asked us this question, because when I first started using Restream, I remember looking around for this, not finding it, assuming it was a user error. I've just been going back and forth with chat after looking online, and my business partners looking as well. And what's interesting is that they don't have closed captioning, which now I will have the opportunity to talk with this third-party vendor that we subscribe to. And also it's another good reminder about the fact that it's on us as users to figure this stuff out and make sure that in everything that we do, that we are being as inclusive and creating an accessible environment for everybody. And I so appreciate that you asked me that, Dr. Keith. So thank you, thank you. And I gave you what I think is the closest, most reasonable solution, which is not ideal, which is I can put captions on in post-production. The other thing that might be helpful is that when you watch it on LinkedIn, you should be able to click a little CC button so that on LinkedIn, you may be able to see the captions. Can you see it on yours?
another techie hack is I would open up Otter. So the other day, I had a conversation with someone who is one of the Indian language speakers first, right? I don't know which, but there was an accent, and it made it a little tricky for me to understand some of the words she was saying. And so I had Otter running, and Otter was catching the words that sometimes I wasn't. So I didn't have to interrupt our flow of conversation, which was so lovely. And like I could just glance at Otter and get, oh, what was that word she said that I didn't quite catch, and keep the flow going. So there's another.
Can you give us a step-by-step, Rachel, on how you did that for folks who don't even know what Otter is?
I'm going to do it with y'all right now. You may need to have an account, but you're going to go to otter.ai and you are able to record meeting notes. And again, you might need a login. On my screen right now, it's got me logged right into otter.ai with my Gmail account. Everything's all connected at your own risk, right? All I have to do is click this pretty record button on the top right corner. It asks me which meeting I would like to record, this one, because it's also connected to my calendar, right? Everything is all connected. And right now I am seeing in real time the words printing on the screen that I am saying.
Wonderful.
So it's, again, we techies are always figuring out workarounds and trying to make things accessible, because and this is us, we prioritize accessibility, transparency, trust, equity, just a little bit more than ROI. And so when we have the privilege of going back to the folks who prioritize ROI first, we can be like, hey, you missed something, and we really care about accessibility. So could you please just build in closed captioning to your Restream platform? But if we're not asking for it, it's not happening. So thank you, Dr. Keith.
Yes. Okay, so we are going to talk about what has inspired Rachel and I to drop what we were doing and plan our AI summer camp in August. But first, Rachel, I want to set up kind of a couple of things for you to share with the good people. One is, tell us about your company. Tell us what you're excited about there. And I want you to kind of outline for us what your daily ecosystem looks like in the tech AI, philanthropy, nonprofit world, because you have a unique lens and you are a natural born connector. Every time I talk to you, you know this, I'll be like, well, how do you know so much stuff?
Yes,
Because,
yes.
and this is what makes, I think, us a really good compliment, is that Rachel knows a world that I don't know at all. And I have, my own little corner of the world that I know like the back of my hand. And together we're covering a lot of territory.
Yes, which is super exciting because the nonprofit space really needs our support right now. And that's kind of my segue into why I launched my consultancy, Full Circle Impact Solutions, was originally developed to help grant makers build equity into their process, right? So we just had a transparency issue. That's something that grant makers say that they care about and want to make sure that they are accessible to their nonprofit partners. That could be screen readers, that could be, color choices, that could be global language translation. And so it really runs the gamut of what we talk about when we say accessibility or equity, right? These words have to be defined and practiced. And so that's what the organization aspired to do. But the framework that I work around is people, process, and tools. And so the people part is in cognitive science. I learned deeply how chaotic our decision making is sometimes, how we can get caught in fear and not want to do things that may benefit us ultimately. And so I recognized I can't update a process. People like the way they've been doing it for 30 years unless I can get the people to understand why we need to change the process, why we need to do this differently. And then the last piece is tools. Everything runs on technology. You can't run a grant making platform without a digital tool at this point. And so helping people understand how those tools can support your goals for equity, inclusion, accessibility, or how they can create real obstacles for people interacting with those tools. So that's what Full Circle Impact Solution is doing. And then there is an incredible focus on AI right now, just because that's what y'all need. And so Anne and I are really driving that conversation to help get you up to speed in what these tools can do in your specific daily workflows. What is exciting me about tech and AI and the nonprofit philanthropy workspace is I keep framing as promise and peril. We are all lean and mean. I talk to philanthropies that are lean and mean with all the money in the world to have a giant staff. That's not their priority. Their priority is to work efficiently and effectively, the same as the nonprofits, right? The whole sector is here to generate impact. And that means having a lean and efficient team. AI makes that even more attainable. You're able to have data-based insights in seconds instead of hours of combing through a database. You're able to generate email correspondence and make sure that your customer service engagement is meeting the mark, right? And so I think that's one of the most exciting things. I'll share a little story, Anne, where there was an employee at a nonprofit who kept getting passed over for promotion. She had English as a second language. And so some of her emails they weren't hitting the mark. And so as soon as she started using AI to get her emails to sound and present the way she wanted them to, she got that promotion. And so it's like a small thing, but there is a playing field that we have to play in. And part of that looks like a certain style of communication, a certain way of presenting, and we can start to change that. But for now, AI can at least give us some efficiency and some tools to get there. And then we can start to, and this is our goal, right? To revise the playing field. Like if this is not the way we want to communicate as funders and donors and grant seekers, we can start to shift those conversations, and AI can help us do that.
Let me interject on this point, a use case that I have just, it's similar to what you just shared. Relationship, one of the things that's me is when I'm communicating with somebody and I know what their style is, what they need from me, right? Some of my people want the hi, how are you? How is your fourth? Other people want, in the heading that says, action required, and they want it bolded. And then it's not even hi, it's just boom, here's the question, need this from you ASAP, don't go change an Ann. But So that's really helpful because I don't have to waste my brain calories, right? So I've got a GPT that sets up for each of my different clients who have different needs. I work with
Yes.
boomers and I work with Gen X and I work with Gen Z and I work with millennials. Very
Yep.
different. I work with people in academia. I work with people in nonprofit. I work with volunteers. I work with hard driving entrepreneurs, right? I work with
Yep.
founders. Like it's just different. And my whole live long life, I have looked at the blank screen, started, my Shakespearean writing process, and wasted so much of my precious brain calories on something like that rather than just getting to the heart of the matter, which is what are we trying to accomplish together? What's the goal we're driving toward? Conversely, as a leader, one of the things that I wish I had when I was in house was a GPT for my people to email me,
Yes.
because one of the things that really is challenging, particularly in higher ed, is that um, and particularly working in a performative environment, one where imposter syndrome runs rampant, one where people are oftentimes in a defensive posture, is that while we're working on a project together, people will typically send a lot more information than is actually required, right? Typically email, I think of as for decisions, not discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds so like, I sound like a diva a little bit, but that's definitely not my intention. My intention is to say to people, you don't need to write me a 600-word email. You can write me a 20-word email, because
Yep.
when you send me the 600-word, I don't know if there's a request, and I
Yep.
can't help you be at your best if I don't know. And if you just want to send me the short one and trust me that I will ask you if there's a follow-up, I could have saved so many of my colleagues so much time. And I'm
Yes.
hoping that people within organizations are starting to think along those lines. Because like you say, for me, it's people, process, culture that is like the whole foundation, and the technology is the way that we optimize people, process, and culture. So I just want to
100%.
throw a couple of really
And
practical use
culture,
cases
no,
out.
I love that, Anne, because I think it's also micro and macro. And this came out in the
Yes.
She Leads conversation where I was like, if
Yes.
you have to write emails in like tech bro language because you work in tech bro land,
Yes.
okay, well, can we start to revise what professionalism looks like in those spaces? Sure, we'll get there. But in the
Yeah.
meantime, your boss may need a certain kind of correspondence, and that's going to
Yes.
serve you better, right? So there's like the really micro, like how do you make sure your boss understands what you're saying? And then macro level, do you sound professional as defined by your industry and making sure that you're hitting those marks?
Exactly. One of my tech friends, who's 27 years old and is actually my business mentor, Josh Houston. I had never used Slack when I worked in higher ed. Like we have Teams, right? And so, which is very different, and it was pretty new and barely anyone was using it. And so I go over into my life as an entrepreneur, and I live in Slack now. And I didn't know that you just like write the message. So I would sign my Slack messages like,
Yes.
like, talk to you later. And he's like, I love how you do that. I'm
Well,
like,
and
oh
you
my God, I'm
remember
so
like
Gen
the
X.
days of AOL, right? Where like grandma would write it like a letter and it was like, oh, this is instant messenger, grandma. That's not how you
Right.
do this, right?
Right. Right. I get these text messages from my dad, and he's just basically, it's like it's a Word document, but it's in text form. And I'm somewhere in the middle. And I was like, oh, culturally,
Yes.
I mean, my friends are totally, they just think it's hilarious that I'm Gen X and like Mama Bear, and they call it ants pressing buttons when things go wrong.
Yes.
But anyway, but they didn't think less of me. But what if I were working with a client who is paying attention to, are you in this world? Are you
Mm-hmm.
like me? Do you get
Yes.
where I'm coming from? Do you use my words, my language, my syntax? And I'm saying, sincerely, Anne, they're like, who is this interloper? So
Yes.
those kind of little things that AI can help us with so much as we identify first, what are we trying to accomplish?
Yep.
Then, is this something for AI or not? right? And if it
Yes.
is, how do we set that up? And that's why I think that's one of the reasons why you and I have kind of stopped what we're doing to go, okay, there's this gap. People don't actually know how to do this stuff, and they're
Right.
missing these opportunities. So, can
And
you
it's
talk a
going to be
little
like
bit more?
that's the secret moment of culture change too,
Yes.
right? Like
Yes.
we can't even imagine what that's going to look like as AI kind of infiltrates, but culture is going to start to shift. And this is the moment where we get to decide what that looks like, right? So back to the quote again, Anne, of like
Mm,
our cultural values and priorities are going to show up in how and when and what we use AI for. And if we're not the ones driving and deciding that, yeah, it could become like cyborg world if we let it. That is totally a possibility in our future. But if we care
absolutely.
about relationships, if we care about authentic engagement, then AI can continue to be a supplement, right? It can supplement what we're doing as opposed to driving for us. And I think back to your comment when we kicked off is only you can do it, right? So whatever
Yes.
skill set you're bringing to your job today, you're there for a reason. You have a
Yes.
particular skill set. You've cultivated it for 2 months. You've cultivated it for 2 decades. You have a
Yes.
skill set. You are in a seat. AI
Yes.
is here. What are you
Yes.
doing? Right? These are givens. These are the givens that you're
Mhm.
dealing with. And you can decide to lean in and say, I want to help drive AI culture at my organization, or I just want to be told and receive. And I think, especially as women, we've been pretty comfortable with being told and receiving culture. And I think this is an opportunity for us to say, we have a voice, we have a point of view. And guess what? In the nonprofit world, we prioritize relationship. And so where
Yes.
AI gets plugged in, it needs to be precise, it needs to drive efficiency, but not
Yes.
at the expense of relationship.
Absolutely. And in fact, the other way around, like we were talking about, with culture and communication, I did this poll on LinkedIn the other day about, is AI going to help overcome imposter syndrome because we have access to more information, more insights, more knowledge, more readily? Like we could take all that info, crunch it, turn it into knowledge, and also we can vet our ideas, right? We can talk to AI about, this idea, that idea. And when we come to the table, we've had that process, that thought process, to kind of get some of those ideas that maybe we're not as comfortable with, kind of refine those? Or are we going to have more imposter syndrome because we feel like our intellect is kind of less than
Yes,
because AI is so smart? And I was so happy. 78% of the people said it's going to improve our imposter syndrome. So
that's
can you imagine?
amazing.
Yeah. So can you imagine if women who have, I actually, by the way, this is a little tiny bit off topic, but not totally. I believe more in imposter treatment than I do in imposter syndrome. I
Yeah.
believe in imposter thoughts, typically work related imposter thoughts. But for the most part, I think that the reason why we have these, imposter syndrome, which, by the way, syndrome is a pretty kind of heavy handed word. And
Hmm.
also, we're not trying to bamboozle anybody, so we're not even imposters. So it's a very strange term. It was never meant to be a term of art. It was debunked years and years ago, but it was too late. But the imposter syndrome that women have like labored under historically, if we're able to chip away at that, right? And like unleash the wisdom and the empathy and the intellect that we've always had all along now,
Yeah.
because AI can give us that leg up, like, look out.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the insidious cultural things that was done to women, right? Like, I
Yes.
didn't walk in thinking I was a dumbass. I didn't walk in thinking I didn't have answers. I opened my mouth and people told me to be quiet. Folks
Yeah.
said, like, oh, no, that's not relevant, right? So it's again, like, to
Oh,
just kind of underscore how this cultural thing starts to feed the way that we show up. And then you give it a label like, oh, you have this thing, you have a syndrome, you must just, it's in you. It's like, no, you
yeah.
did it to me.
No,
And so I want
yes.
to get tactical, practical, because how does AI help with imposter syndrome? Let me
Yes.
tell you,
Yeah.
you're in a meeting. Someone says something and you're like, I do not agree with that. You don't have the confidence in that moment to say something. Totally fine. We're taking baby steps here. You go into AI and you say, this was the thought that was presented. Can you refute that thought? Or you say, this was the thought that was presented. This is what I think. Can you elaborate? Right? You can use AI as your thought partner and say, I'm pretty sure I have a clue about what my points are here. Let me put my points in. Let me have AI refute it and help me see, like maybe I missed something. But, right? I mean, thank you,
Jasmine, you're
Jasmine.
so right. Rachel Kimber with the mic drops all the time. And hi, Jasmine. Absolutely. And then to also, Rachel, to put into the large language model, here's the thought that I had. Challenge me on it. Let's go
Yeah,
through a thought process. I had this thought. Can you help me figure out? I felt like I was being gaslit. Ask me some
yeah.
questions, you know,
Oh,
and I'm
here's
wondering,
another
was I
fun one,
being
Anne.
gaslit? Yeah.
I was in a group. Again, everyone's trying to figure out their AI governance.
Yeah.
It was like a 2 hour long conversation. I'm like, we made no progress. It can't be that hard. We're just writing a rule book, right? Like, what are the rules of the game? Well, in Go Fish, you pick a card and someone else, right? It's like, it's really not that complicated. So we're creating a rule book for how and when we use AI. Hey, AI, could you just pop out a framework that I can respond to and see if it works
Yes.
for my organization? Instead of wasting 2 hours talking in circles, now we have a
Thank you.
document. And if you have some sort of a governance document at your organization already, you could just say, hey, let me take out the organization name. This is our governance policy for data. Can you take this governance policy and include a lens for AI?
Yes.
You bring that to your senior leadership and say, hey, I know that AI is bouncing around our organization. I don't know who's driving this conversation. I have this framework. If you guys want to respond to it, like it
Mm-hmm.
exists. Right. And so how
Mm-hmm.
do we take baby steps to get ourselves comfortable, our
Mm-hmm.
organizations, like even considering this as a conversation, and then step out and find your sector level community with us so that we can all be learning and connecting these dots together. And that's another thing we wanted to share is like, we're everywhere all the time. We are out there
Mm-hmm.
learning stuff. We are out there picking
Mm-hmm.
up little bits of information and we're feeding it back to you. Like that's
Yes.
what our point is right now is AI is fast moving. There's so much to learn. There are so many things happening every day. The other one I want to point to is the US came out with guidance, right? The US Senate governance policy guidance on what we're going to fund, how we're going to fund it, what's allowed, what's not allowed. There was a shadow report that came out from community activists, nonprofits, academics saying, you missed some things,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
they found each other and said, guess what? This is an incomplete conversation. And I'm not going to wait for you to invite me to the conversation. I'm going to create a document and share it as broadly as I can because there are
Yes.
other voices and other perspectives that need to be a part of this AI cultural shift that we're
Right.
all moving through right now.
Right. So something I want to add to this is, I don't exactly know how to articulate it, but it's just a feeling that came up. You and I are paid. We pay ourselves, our clients pay us to be like this, to be thought leaders, to be everywhere, to be like citizen scientists, to be able to communicate what's going on in all these pockets. And it's a lot. Like we're 10 out of 10 every day, pretty much, right, Rachel? And we're spending a lot of time, but we do that because we can. It is a privilege, not to say it fell out of the sky. A hard-won privilege, sometimes through the school of hard knocks, sometimes because one door closed and another one opened. But we don't expect that other people are spending 24/7 in these community spaces, at meetings, with the thought leaders, in communities of practice, listening to all the podcasts, playing with all the tools. We feel I may be speaking for you, so please correct me, but what I have gotten from you and been especially inspired by is the sense of responsibility that we both hold in our hearts for caring for the people who are in our communities and paving the way so that some of this stuff they might not need to have a friction point for, because we're saying, okay, we've gone out, we went to this meeting, we did this, we put it into a thing, here's what we think, here's our recommendation, here's
Yep.
how we recommend establishing your personal code of ethics, here's how we recommend your AI council, because we've been in all the spaces and seen what's working and what's not. We don't have all the answers, there are no experts, but our goal is to make all that stuff easier for you so you can draft off of us.
Yes. And there are no experts. We're becoming that, right? We are the ones who are leaning in to shape culture, and mostly out of frustration, right? So again, I just dropped in a link for the shadow report. Like, that came out of frustration. That came out of a bunch of people who care deeply about what is happening with AI, and the fact that the US Senate and the folks who build the tools, right? I think Elon Musk was part of it, Zuckerberg was part of it. Like, the folks you would expect were part of the steering committees, not the academics, not the community activists. And we're the ones who, we saw what happened with social media. Our young people were exploited, data was extracted, and we have mental health problems now.
Yeah.
If we want to avoid that moment with AI, we need to be leaning in. Those of us who live in communities of care, who show up in service, need to not ignore this trendy moment, right? Because it's not trendy. It's here. It's happening. And if we don't lean in, then we're going to end up with similar outcomes that we saw with social media, which we're learning now, Anne, right? We're just learning how devastating that was for our young people.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about the AI summer camp.
Yes, yes. That's what we're doing, right? We're like, let's make this fun and accessible for y'all.
Let's make it fun. Let's make it accessible. Let's mix introspection with super practical tips. The things that we really went for are the hands-on practical training that you will be able to transfer into your regular life immediately. So while we're together during our AI summer camp, which is August 9th through 16th, and the QR code up on your screen will take you to our landing page, which we just launched like half an hour ago. So I'm super excited to be sharing it with you all.
I'm
right
literally
now.
writing down the dates now to be sure that I am right. Like, that's how hot and fresh this is. This is how excited we are, that we're barely ready, but we want to make sure that y'all don't fall behind. Summer camp is going to end and we're all back to it. And AI needs to be part of that picture.
Absolutely. So, we decided we were going to do this. We're forces of nature. So here we are, we're doing it. I'm going to show you all, this will help us kind of just guide the conversation. So we decided that there were two things that were absolutely top priorities. One was to really hone in on how to actually use the tools. I know how many of you all are so sick of the blah, blah, blah. I've like almost stopped going to webinars. I don't go to conference sessions, like anything that's more than a couple of days behind. I can't do it. I don't want to have conversations about all the nonsense that doesn't have anything to do with how I actually use the tools.
Well,
Now,
Anne, I think we just demonstrated how tactical we get. Like, we're not talking about you need a governance manual. We're going to start creating a governance manual, right? Like, we're not sitting back and waiting for someone to start the process. We're going to start it with you.
Right. So here were some of the things that I have been seeing, right? And Rachel and I kind of roll our eyes at is webinar fatigue. Conferences are so expensive, underwhelming and overwhelming, and like speakers that I just can't relate to. And I know that not all speakers are going to be my jam. I get that, but I have a very hard time finding any who are, and who bring a point of view that's more holistic to the table.
Let's sit with holistic real quick, Anne.
Yeah.
Because I think that came out at our She Leads conversation, is that we're talking about culture. We're not just talking about a tool. And we get to shape and decide. And that means that we're bringing our identities to these conversations. How have these tools hurt or harmed us? How have we been left out of conversations professionally or otherwise? And that this is an opportunity and a moment to decide, I am excellent and I'm going to become excellent at AI because that's what this moment
Yes.
requires.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am excellent and I'm going to become excellent at AI. And what I have appreciated so much and what like just fires me up every day is how this has expanded my intellectual horizons. I have a whole reservoir in my brain that I didn't even know that I had, right? And it's not because I'm like using AI to like give me my thoughts, not at all. It's that I had the capacity to learn new things, right?
Yeah.
Gen X women, by the way, and it's not, certainly not to exclude other groups or demographics, but Gen X women are crushing it. We were ready for this moment.
Well, and I think the reason why, Anne, is it takes a few decades to become as brave, curious, and resilient as we are, right? Like
Yes.
you might come out the gates that way, but if you're not, give it 20 years as a woman on this planet, and you will become brave and curious and certainly resilient. And so
Yes.
if we're resonating with you right now, you definitely want to show up for this course. You want to get a little AI curious, and we will bring
Mm-hmm.
you along on this journey.
Yeah, exactly. I think that both Rachel and I have been through what I feel like is a rite of passage that no one told me about, which is there's a moment when you realize that other women are looking up to you and watching how you are in the world. They're watching how you show up. They're watching how you engage with the people around you, right? And all of a sudden, you're kind of watching yourself like you're watching a movie and you're going, this decision has more gravity than it would have 20 years ago, 15 years ago. How I
Yeah.
engage with I want to be on the front end because I know that I can bring, like Rachel said, like the subject matter expertise. You got to be on this planet long enough to amass 25, 30 years of subject matter expertise. It
Yeah,
just takes time.
exactly. And
Um,
honestly, what AI is, it's problem solving.
yeah.
What are we most adept at, right? Give me something to muddle my way through, and I will come out that other end with the flag fleet. Like
Yeah.
that's just what we do, and AI helps us do it even faster.
So, Rachel, your secret sauce is building psychological safety and building the container for people to be able to open up in a way that they haven't historically been able to do. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you're bringing that to the
Yep.
course?
And this is by no means requirement to like disclose yourself, but it's
Mm-mm.
about creating a space where you can comfortably be your most authentic self. You can ask the questions, you can trust that the women that are in that space will probably resonate with what you're asking or what you're vibing on. I think we often assume that we're the only, probably because we're often the only woman in a room or the only woman of color or whatever the community it is that you show up with. We're comfortable being kind of freelance. And that's
Mm.
not the way we build power. We build power by sharing our vulnerability, by letting folks know there are no dumb questions and that somebody else had that same question. And this is the space that we're going to create so that you can bring that. I'll just kind of briefly touch on, my expertise with that. I came upon accidentally. I started working with a coach. She was phenomenal. And I decided that maybe we need to do a women's retreat.
Mm.
So I brought together 10 strangers to a beautiful Airbnb with my coach, with my yoga lady. And on the first night, we all come together. And again, I have just created this container of safety just by showing up, just by being me, by being vulnerable myself. And folks are just comfortable enough to drop trauma in
Yeah.
this community. And I think it resulted in a lot of healing for those who needed to share and a lot of healing for those who maybe didn't feel comfortable sharing, but resonated with the struggle of the other folks. And so, yes, we're going to learn about AI, but we're also going to be able to show up as our authentic selves and say, technology has sucked for me because every time I try to
Mm.
talk to my IT director, I get told to go sit in that corner and just watch that video on cybersecurity training.
Oh my
And so,
God, that's my actual situation. Like that happened. That was me.
right? And
Yes.
that's it. We're going to get real tactical and practical. There's no like up here, like maybe sometime. No, like we know these things happened. We can talk about them and we can figure out how do we navigate that? How do we develop a governance policy that your director of IT doesn't want to see? Well, you build a
Oh,
collaborative. You use your positional power. You find your allies and you
mhm.
figure out how to drive it forward because it matters to you. It matters to your excellence and how you want to show up. And there's no reason for you to sit back and be told to just be quiet.
Yes, 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 on all these things. Oh my goodness. Um, One of the things that we're also doing is you can, for people who sign, I was explaining this to Rachel because it's one of the things that I learned about when I was first starting like doing courses and whatnot, is that we offer like a one-time, like crazy opportunity that does not make sense and you cannot scale it. But in order to help people get like an extra special experience, we offer something like this. So a lot of people who I'm talking to now are doing one of two things. They're either already like super into AI and wanting to step into the nonprofit space, or they're super into nonprofit and want to step into the AI space. More and more, particularly women, building either a side hustle or full pivot into I want a consultancy, I want to be here, I want to go up, I want to be the kind of the counterbalance to what we lovingly refer to as tech bros,
Yeah.
right? People who want to be in this space want to be taking the approach that we take, people, process, culture, and tools, not just tools, right? Right. Like blammy, here's the thingamajig, you figure it out, we'll see you later. But instead, as an example, when I go into a space, something that was a real wake up call for me was working with a client and recommending, meeting recorders, which we will definitely talk about in our session. There are things that we all need to think about with AI meeting recorders, of course, beautiful in so many ways and also slightly extractive as well. But I was recommending that this organization start using AI meeting recorders because they were losing so much information in translation and nobody has time.
Mm-hmm.
And they were delaying meetings until every single person was available. So then they were having a hard time meeting project deadlines.
Mm.
AI meeting recorders solve a lot of those problems. But what I learned in the process is that there's a woman who is nearing retirement. She does the note taking. She loves being at the center of those conversations. She loves being the person who knows what's going on. So after the meeting, she goes around and she consults with everybody and she says, "What did you hear? Was there anything I missed in my notes? Where do you want me to put this information?" It is self-actualizing for her. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I'm sitting there, new consultants, all, lots of good ideas, and I'm like, hey, I'm meeting recorders, everybody's got to do it. She's kind of shrinking, and it took me a while to realize like this would be taking away from her something that she loves to do. Of course, in
Yep.
my mind, I'm like, nobody loves taking notes, but some people do, and she
Yep.
does. And
Yep.
so figuring those things out so that you don't have to go into a space and do something like that, I don't believe I did any damage. I mean, I'm not completely tone deaf, but it was, in my head in the moment, I'm going, oh, there's something going on here. I'm not sure what it is. Oh, it's that she likes doing this and it gives her power,
But it's also AI as the supplement instead of the replacement.
Yes. Yeah,
Right?
it
Because
can
I
have
am an
both.
excellent note taker. I can do real-time notes like nobody's business.
Yes.
AI is an incredible supplement, or a day I'm feeling a little off, or a day she's out
Yep.
sick, right? And then
Yep.
somebody still needs to collate that knowledge and cross-check, right?
And
It's not a
cross-check it.
perfect tool. It is not a perfect tool yet. Again,
No.
I don't know what the future holds, but right now, we still need that lady note taker to make sure that we didn't miss a perspective or AI didn't, misrepresent a conversation.
Misrepresent.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we include a bunch of other things because we love to spoil our the people in our community. One of our core values in our company, um, sorry, is that We want the people around us to feel cared for. So we do stuff like this. We give you all the things that we have. We give you the resources, the micro lessons I've created, the guides, the toolkits, all that kind of good stuff. We're just giving it to you all. Oh, and I wanted to say that we have optimized this for fundraisers in that a lot of the use cases that will be like our go-to will be, nonprofit fundraising oriented, but that does not mean that this is not going to be a great experience for any other type of role in the social sector. Or honestly, yeah, social sector writ large, including
Yeah,
corporate.
because I think the idea is that y'all are gonna bring the cases. Y'all know what
Yeah.
your daily workflow looks like, you know what problems you need to solve. If we have 3 fundraisers, great. They're gonna have a wonderful cohort of
Yep.
fundraising discussion. We have a
Yep.
couple ops people, we have a couple HR people, like, however it slices and dices, we're
Yes.
going to be learning about how do we take your case and find some solutions and start building a playbook and governance around it.
Yes. Can you talk about our launch and the special thing that we have going on at our launch meeting?
Yes, at our launch meeting, I mentioned that there is an identity and coaching aspect that is so dear to my heart.
Mm.
I'm not going to share the coach's name at this stage, but it's someone who is incredible, well versed in the social sector, has worked for some of the big players as far as I'm concerned, and
Mm.
she is offering to come in and help us kind of kick off and position AI as a cultural phenomenon, as an opt-in, and to really help us explore it, not just as a tool, but as something that we can use to bring our fullest excellent selves into our professional spaces.
I love this so much because I have witnessed again and again. So, one of the things that we started doing in January was hosting weekend GPT jams where bunches of people from 5 or 6 different communities would come together from noon to 2 Pacific every single Saturday. And we had a different program each time. It started out just because Sam Altman announced custom GPTs, and we were all like, we need to be building custom GPTs. And we did. And then we did a 24-hour hackathon making GP 24-hour 20
Yeah,
I was just sitting there going 24 hours, that can't be real. Yeah, I stayed up
yeah,
for 24 hours straight at my big age. Um
yes.
and I was tired for like 2 weeks
But
afterward,
that's how
but
excited we are, right? To like
that's
be in
how
the
excited we
places, to
are.
get the knowledge and to share it back. Because, and we've also talked about self-identity in the age of AI,
Yes. Well,
right?
yeah.
Like who we are is starting to shift because we are AI experts in this moment, right? Like we're the
Yeah.
ones who,
So
yeah,
yeah, so that was what was happening was every Saturday our group, the people on the call we would be talking about self-identity and how it's changed and who are we and what have we been doing with our lives and what's fact and what's fiction. And it was face melting. And I
yes,
felt so underprepared for conversations like that, holding space where I'm melting down, 6 or 7 people on screen are melting down. I'm going like, I don't know how to put the toothpaste back in the tube here, people. And I was
yes,
sharing that, and Rachel has, this wonderful coach in her life, and is bringing her into our lives as well on our first day of the AI summer camp. So very excited about that. Um, we'll get super practical in our first, tactical session, which will be on the following Monday. And, up until now, I've always leaned in just to the OpenAI ecosystem in the early days of dabbling with AI tools, but now because I think it's so important to learn the ins and the outs of one system before you get the like shiny thing syndrome and start trying whole bunches of them, because it just gets to be a lot of little data points and quirks. And so you want to optimize what you're doing in one model. But now that Anthropic has gone to the next level with Sonnet, we're also going to spend some time in Claude. So we'll have the opportunity to compare and contrast outputs, learn how each of these tools respond to our natural language processing, as well as, very formal, really high, like return on investment prompting that you'll do, and you'll create your prompt gallery going forward that you can share with your colleagues or keep all to
We just
yourself.
spun out a little bit. I'm going to reground it. So there was someone who did an AI training, and they were training like funders, people with the money were sitting
Yeah.
in the room, and she went to a live chat GPT demo, and the information that was happening in the live demo wasn't identical to what she had prepared. And she got really flustered, apparently. That's not going to happen in our session. We are expecting the unexpected because
Yes.
AI responds to all the subtleties of our prompts, of all the histories in your browser, right? Like, we're going to make sure that you're aware of this, because when you go in and put in a prompt, it's going to be, connecting dots in ways that you did not anticipate. And that is the fun of AI. But again, promise and peril. You need to be cautious. And that's where we will help you understand what some of those cautions are. But then you're going to get in there and start playing, and you're going to find the unexpected too.
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There's a woman on TikTok who I absolutely love, who has an AI camp that she runs. And one of the things she does is, and this is like, I love it and I hate it and I get it. And I also like, oh my goodness, it hits so close to home. She makes it purposely very, very difficult to figure out how to sign up. Because she's like, if you can't figure out how to sign up, you cannot be in this class, because you're
Wow.
going to run into these obstacles. And I need to know that you have the fortitude when you can't find the button to figure out where
Yes.
the button is without texting me 5 times. And I was like, ooh, man, that is tough love, but I get it. I
Yes.
totally get it.
Oh my goodness.
So one of the neat things that we're going to do, we have, like we've said, like we've got all these really, really kick-ass people in our sphere, and we're going to, this is optional. The session to meet founders and see their platforms is totally optional. But what I've found is people love to look under the hood and to hear what it's like to launch a startup company. And so we're going to bring some of our besties in to share that with you. And on our next session, you want to talk a little bit about how this might work with different use cases, Rachel? So I'm thinking we're going to go like, we're going to take our practical skills and now we're going to apply it to some naughty, like a naughty,
Yes.
not naughty, challenges that we all have in our
Yeah.
lives and in our work.
I feel like this is the fun of like a hackathon model, which both Anne and I shared. We went to like our first ones ever as, the elderly folks at the hackathon, however you want to frame our identities. But it was amazing. It was such a cool experience because we're presented with a problem, and then you can determine what's the case, like how do you start to work backwards, and you can get really deep into the technical, right? There's open source tools that you can actually start building a chat bot if you felt so inclined. We may not go that far, but that's the concept. That's the idea, is you're going to look at your daily workflow. You're going to think about some pain point. You're going to think about some potential collaborative, maybe you and HR, have some friction that you want to smooth out, or you're having trouble getting reports over to finance in the format that they need. We're going to figure out, like, what is that thing that is causing you grief that you can shine, right? You have an opportunity to really step out at your organization and say, guess what? I have a solution. They can take it or leave it. That's not, we don't need to go there. But that empowered feeling of that you solve the problem is what you are going to come out of this advanced AI use case session with. And that's where we have to set our boundaries, right? The world is not going to start, applauding us just because we're problem solvers, but we can feel really good about the fact that we used a new tool, we explored a problem, and we have a solution to propose. And that is going to be incredible. I promise you, it's going to feel absolutely incredible.
And we will talk about what it's like to encourage an organization to adopt responsible AI. And we both have lots of experience with our own experiences doing tech rollouts, our experiences speaking truth to power, the network that we operate within. We have lots of intrapreneurs who are in this moment of, how do I bring my organization along, or do I need to be looking somewhere else where I can spread my wings and future proof my career and make the impact that I want to make because they are embracing AI and celebrating it. So on our last session together, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how do you build your own personal code of ethics, right? After spending a week together, right? How do you create your own personal code of ethics? What does that look like in reality, right?
Yeah.
In reality, what does it look like to integrate a framework for responsible AI into your organization? What are some of the risks? Like,
Yes.
is your boss going to get defensive? Potentially, right? If they're not an AI aficionado like you, if they're not obsessed with it like we are, yeah, these are things we have to be aware of. And then what does it look like to build an AI council that's filled with a totally decentralized group of human beings? This is not the executive leadership team. This is the intern and the
Yes.
board and risk management and the ED,
Yeah.
and a donor and
There was
the person. Yeah.
a fun question at Fund for the City of New York, Anne, was, okay, so what do we do on Monday morning? How do we get, we just spent, an entire day kind of thinking about how we're going to drive AI at organizations. What do we do? And I was
Yes.
like, well, if you run that
Yes.
organization, and that's who I was speaking to, the CEOs, the heads of organizations, go find your secret cyborg, right?
Yes.
Top of the organization, and whoever is playing with AI, you two need to sit down, have a chat, and develop a strategy. Like this is how it begins. And so if you are already the
Yes.
secret cyborg at your organization, Anne and I are
Yep.
telling senior leadership, you cannot ignore this. Find the
Right.
experts at your organization, you all, and have a
Yeah.
conversation about what does governance look like
Yep.
for our work.
Yes. And it can't be the go put on a dunce cap and sit in the corner and go watch the cybersecurity video for the 87th time. No. Like, it's going to be a whole different world. And so one of the things, and I know we got to wrap up, we get so freaking excited about it, I can barely stand it. One of the things that I'm really enthusiastic about in this era is the opportunity for so many of us to raise our hands and go, yeah, I'm gonna be the person. It's
Yep.
me this time, right?
Yep.
Like, I didn't do the XY. Did I run the campaign? No, I wasn't campaign director. Am I gonna lead this organization into the future of AI? Yeah, why not? Why not me? Right?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yes.
And so what
Self-identity in the age of AI. We're
self-identity.
building new
Yes.
cultures. We're building new ways of operating. And if we're the ones driving it, we get to help decide what that looks like.
Yes. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up real quick. So a couple of things that we talked about today. One is our changing self-identity and how we can support each other in that transition. We talked about a few specific examples of how to use AI to level up your leadership, and, give people what they need. We talked about access to coaching, access to support. We talked about Rachel and my networks and how we're gonna how we kind of like bring it all together and distill it so that you all can draft off of us if you would want to. And that the AI summer camp is right around the corner. It's August 9th through 16th. We want all of you there. Like I said, we just opened the cart like half an hour ago to the public. So it's going to be first come, first serve. It's a small group. If you are at all interested, either go ahead, go for it and sign up, or reach out to us for a conversation. We're delighted. Just, we could hop on a calendar and have a Zoom call.
Yeah.
And
You may have undersold it a little bit, Anne, but I think is one of your values is like being accessible and available for the folks who join. You get access to us, right? If there are questions or cases or things you want to explore, we're excited to do that with you. And so beyond the course is you get to spend time with some of the folks who are driving these conversations, and we're excited to drive them with you. So please do join us.
Please do join us. And we would love, love, love to see you there. For those of you who are not my regulars, I'm going to put a QR code up here. Where's my QR code for? Oh, I don't have it for all of my stuff. Hold on one second, everybody. Sorry, I thought I had one. One second. Maybe Donnie's in the chat. I didn't even tell you guys. We have my business partners in the chat usually dropping links for me, but he might be doing something else. We have, I don't know about anybody else out there, but we have 3 very hungover dogs today from giving them so many
Benadryl treats.
Benadryl, so much Benadryl, honestly. Last
The
night,
4th of July is not kind to the doggies.
not kind to our furry friends. Hold on. Okay, here we go. So for those of you who aren't my regulars and might not, oh, he dropped it. Okay, thank you, Donnie. That is where we put all of our recordings from the AI Empowered Fundraiser show, except for I haven't put the last couple up, but they'll be there probably by the end of the day. So anytime you want to like hop in there and go through on Fridays, I've done practical trainings on everything from using AI to event planning, to donor comms, to being your own mentor. So those are available to you. We'll have information about this course there. And like I said, most importantly, just always feel free to reach out to me and Rachel. We are your people. We are your people. We are here for you. This is what we do all day, every day. Right?
Can't wait to meet y'all.